Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I will be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. So let's welcome today's guest, Eric Desroches. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful now that we're talking because it's been a while. It's been a minute, as you kids would say, right? Is that the vernacular?
That is. It has been a minute, but it is nice to catch up with you.
It really is. And I remember you always having this deep voice, but you have really gone the Barry White way. I mean, your voice has dropped like many octaves since 8th grade. I mean, understandably, you're a full grown man now, but wow, those are some deep baritone pipes on you.
Yeah, puberty did help me out a little bit there. And I don't know, maybe I should start my own radio show or something. We'll see.
I think so. You have a great voice for it. It's like, wow, I'm intrigued just listening to you. I can't wait to ask you questions just to hear what you have to say. This is great. So, first off, thank you so much for coming on and telling my students about your life and experiences. So, what I'd like you to do is take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, then college, post college, and what you're currently doing now.
Okay, let's see. Well, as you said, my name is Eric Desroches. When did I leave? I went to Don Estridge from 2008 to 2011. Wow, that was a while ago. And then after that, I went to high school. I went to West Boca High. I went to the University of Florida for undergrad, and now I'm currently in a graduate program at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis. I'm in pharmacy school.
Nice. Did you have a particular path that you studied in high school? Were you in a program of any kind?
So no, I didn't do, the IB track or any sort of anything like that. All I did was the typical AP and ACE curriculum, but nothing specific. No.
Excellent. And then when you went to college, did you know what it is that you wanted to do? Did you dabble in many things, or were you already like, okay, this is what I want to go to school for?
So I had a general idea. Most of my family works in healthcare, and I kind of knew that was something that I wanted to do. But originally, when I started off at UF, I actually was a biomedical engineering major. And then I was taking some electives for that. I was leaning towards prosthetics or making medical machinery, something like that. And then I was actually taking an elective, which was an intro to pharmacy elective, and learned about pharmacogenomics specifically, and was like, wow, I really actually enjoy this and can see myself um, doing this. And I spoke with some of my uncles who are pharmacists and switched over to a bio major and went to pharmacy school.
Was that in any way easier than your original? Because that's ridiculous. Your original major, in my opinion, that's unbelievable. Was that any easier, or was it about the same level of academia? Like, was there any drop? Like, did you notice any kind of drop off? Where you're like, whoa, I switched majors, and this is actually easier, or was it about the same?
So I would say yes and no. Yeah, I guess yes is the overall answer, but not too much. So with BME, you focus on your upper level chemistry, your calculus and all that. And then once I switched to bio, I didn't have to worry about calc anymore or anything like that. So it became a little bit easier, but I still had my upper level sciences and stuff. So
Yeah, the high level sciences were still there, but the math disappeared.
right.
Oh, okay. That's cool. How many AP classes do you remember taking in high school?
I want to say I took upwards of 15, maybe around 20, somewhere around there.
That's quite a bunch. Wow, that's incredible. And do you remember, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but out of those, say, 15 you took, how were your grades for those tests? Like how many fives did you get? Did you get any fours?
I got mostly fives and fours. I think AP Chem was the only one I got a three on.
That seems to be a common answer. I've asked this to many people and they've said the same thing. It's like that was the hardest one to pass. It just seems to be a common theme. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and then you also took ACE classes because that's a Florida thing. So, did you wind up getting like a Bright Future scholarship or something for college?
Yeah, I had full Bright Futures, which was great, especially if you stay at a school in Florida. Basically, was going to school for just about free. So
That's awesome. So, your hard work, you would say, paid off with this free scholarship to get this free education.
oh, most definitely did. And then, I mean, for students who decide to go to school out of state, you don't fully lose the Bright Futures because, I mean, as you know, my sister, she chose to go out of state, and
Right.
she got some of it. You lose some of it, but you do retain some of it, which is
Oh,
nice. So it definitely paid off.
that's helpful. That's definitely helpful. Yes. Eric has a twin sister. Who's older by the way? Who's first?
She's older by 6 minutes. I kicked her out of there.
You're like, I need some room. Get out.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
after
great.
9 months in the womb together.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and again, it's funny as a teacher, like you see names and you're like kind of like, well, it's they've got to be and like you're not running around going, yeah, my sister's in your fourth period class and she wasn't like, yeah, my brother's in your second period class. So like it took me like a couple of weeks and I was like, oh, wait a second. And it happens all the time because you guys weren't in the same class, were you?
I'm trying to remember. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think we were. I think I had you right before lunch.
Yeah, because normally when I have fraternal twins, they're in the same class. For whatever reason, the system doesn't recognize that this is your sister. But if it's a brother, it does. Like I never have brother twins together in the same class, but brother sister twins I always have in the same class. So it's
That's
probably
funny.
yeah, it's probably the case. So yeah, and so then did you find I gotta ask the question, I'm sorry. Did you find there to be like this massive competition between you and your sister, or was it just kind of like you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing? Because I don't have a twin, and I only have an older brother. So
I think we were different than most in that regard. Usually, you hear about the sibling rivalries and stuff like that. But we never fought growing up. Um, and we just really pushed each other. And I guess maybe that's where you would say there might have been some competition, but always rooting for each other. Never really tried to outdo the other one or anything like that. So
I do remember that. I do remember the true love and admiration for each other, and always having each other's back no matter what. And I always love that about you guys, that you were so there for each other, and you had your little arguments here and there like everyone does that has a sibling, but never like, I hate my sister or my brother's a jerk. Like you never heard any of those things from either of you. And it's quite unusual, especially in middle school. And the other thing is like you two, both of you are like so chill and mellow. And I wanted to know if that's like a family trait. Is that something that mom, dad, both, or an uncle? Does it derive from there, or is it just how you guys are?
I guess it's a mixture of both. My dad's pretty laid back, and my mom is too. But I think out of everyone, I definitely by far am the most relaxed
The chillest.
and easygoing. That's something I've heard my entire life. But I guess
Always.
it's overarching for the most part. Everyone's pretty relaxed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I remember that, and the more we talk, the more I remember. And you just like I think I remember saying to your parents, like, I need 20 more of these. Like, we could talk about anything. He's the chillest kid in the world. Nothing gets him off kilter. He's just really that mellow, easygoing kind of kid. Laughs at the jokes, doesn't take things personally. And I just remember that about you so much, and it's good to see that obviously has continued into your adult life because that's a wonderful thing to have. You're not high strung. You're not. whatever. You're just this mellow, kind of easygoing dude, and it's really cool. Um, so was there a moment for you that maybe a teacher, a parent, I don't know, your sister, where learning all of a sudden inspired you, where all of a sudden you were like, oh my God, and it doesn't have to be young, it could be when you were older, but is there that clear cut time where you're like, this is when I remember learning just kicking in for me?
Let's see. I would say it started off with my mom more than anything. Just from a young age, she always tried to immerse us in knowledge, whether it was books. I remember she always used to take us to the library every 2 weeks. My sister books, and I'm not talking like picture books. We're talking books, and we'd race through them. We'd read all 10 in 2 weeks and be back for more. We did.
Voracious readers.
Yeah, we definitely were. Did I don't know if Kumon still exists, but
Yes,
it was
yes.
one of those enrichment things, and we were always doing that, or the Hooked on Phonics when we were kids. So learning was just something that like definitely came from us easy and early on. So
I know the answer to this question, but my audience doesn't. Where were your parents born?
my parents were both born in Haiti, so we're me and my sister are first generation Americans.
So, irregardless of where your parents came from, the your generational of people, if your parents were immigrants from somewhere, I have now heard this story many, many, many times that their parents took them to the library and they just would go and read. I had another interview, Samit, his name was, he's in college now. He goes to UF now. And he said the same thing that his parents were born in India and they didn't have all the access that we had and they were constantly brought to the library. It's just so interesting to me now. The more and more that I interview people, the more and more we're quote unquote different. We're totally the same. Like I've heard this story before, and his parents weren't from Haiti. His parents were from India, but same exact story. It's so amazing that as much as we think we don't have in common, we're so similar as people. And that's awesome. So your mom took you guys to the library and you did you get to choose the books, or was mom kind of like guiding the curriculum, or was just like,
No, it was just free reign for us. She would just sometimes she wouldn't even come inside. She'd just sit in the car. All right, I'll wait for you guys. Go get whatever you want. And it got to the point where we'd be asking her to take us to the library more than she would
that's
be saying, guys, let's go to the library. It's
that's
just
so awesome. So that was like ingrained in you at a very early age and never left.
right.
That's amazing. Oh wow. And I'm so glad that you shared that story because like I said, I've heard this before. Like the immigrant child, first generation American, that seems to be the way. Look, here's the education. It's at this place with all the books. It's free. All we have to do is go there and get them and remember to return them and that's it. So that's incredible. So that's where it all started. Oh wow.
Yeah, it definitely made things easier later on because I know you hear stories nowadays of kids saying, I hate to read, or, I never really liked reading. I wasn't an avid reader, which is fine. It's not for everybody, but it definitely translated to coursework pretty well because as you elevate through high school, college, graduate programs, whatever it is, you can't get around that. You
No.
have to read for assignments or this and that.
And the reading gets more challenging, more difficult, and
Yeah, a lot more
more.
dense.
Was there a particular teacher, now that you're saying that this was your mom? So once you went to school, was there a particular teacher that made that aha moment? Maybe it was a class prior you didn't like, but yet this teacher had this style that hooked you in, or maybe it was a class that you'd never had before, and you're like, "Wow, I really like this." Did that exist as well in your life?
I'll say there definitely were a few. I think at every level, usually you gravitate towards one or a few different teachers or professors that do help with that. You were definitely one of them.
Well, thank you. That wasn't a plug for me, but I appreciate that very much.
You were definitely one because you made coming to class fun every day, but then also, taught us in ways that were pretty easy to understand. And then I had Miss Gray, who she actually wasn't a teacher; she was staff at my elementary school, and she definitely one day, I think this was in fourth grade, She wasn't even talking to me. She told my mom that she saw hints of Obama in me. And
Wow.
hearing that as a fourth grader, that
Huge.
really, yeah, that definitely didn't make my ego any smaller.
Yeah, that definitely laid a huge dent in that ego. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Wow. Yeah. Hearing
Um,
that when here's the first African American president to ever hold office, and you're this young kid going, wow, you're comparing me to that dude? Whoa, that's awesome compliment.
yeah, I was right in the middle of everything going on with that. And then in high school, I had my calc teacher, well, my math teacher, I should say. I had her all 4 years in high school for various levels of math, Miss Jacobowitz. She definitely also made learning fun and made me realize that that's something I'm not only good at, but just should value as well. So,
And are all these things individualistic? Like, was there a common factor that you could place them all together? Since what the last person you said was math, was there a commonality between them, or are they just all different people that just touched you at a different time and went, "Whoa, okay, yeah, I'm digging what they're selling here."
yeah, I think it's more so different people, different time, and just different aspects. There definitely was no commonality. Totally different subjects, different teaching styles, and such. So I think it was just in the moment,
Hmm.
and just the relationships formed, or just did it for me, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you were open enough to let that happen because a lot of kids aren't. A lot of kids don't want to let adults into their lives who they don't really know very well. They don't see that you're spending 55 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 180 days out of a school year. And they're just kind of like, yeah, you're just a person in my life making it more difficult. And yet you're embracing these people to help your life be enriched and move forward. That's awesome. And that you had that many. That's really cool. Because most people are like, yeah, I had like one or two. And I'm glad that you had a lot.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
was just fortunate just to attend pretty good schools overall, and that just yeah.
so if you could extrapolate, is there something about like that aha moment with it doesn't matter who it is, with one of those teachers that you can remember that you were like the light bulb just clicked on? Was there like a specific scenario or situation that you could recall?
I remember with Miss Jacobowitz, this was my senior year of high school, and the AP, I was taking AP Calc with her, and the exam was coming up. My senior year, this I guess goes against a lot of what we are here to talk about, but I wasn't a bad student or anything, but just typical senioritis, you know?
Yeah, you'd given up by that point.
Yeah, college is around the corner.
You already
Already, was
got
already
in.
accepted to UF. Knew what was happening. Didn't
Yeah.
really
As long
care
as I don't
too
get
much.
D's, I'll be good.
Right.
It's fine.
So I remember sitting in class one day, and I had her first period, first thing in the morning, with my sister. Actually, we had that class together,
Oh,
and I remember Mr. Koblitz pulled me over to the side, and she said, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." Well, like, what's going on? And she was like, "Oh, I've just, noticed you in class the past, I don't know, a few weeks or so, and something seems off. You're just not really yourself." And I was like, "Oh, in what way?" and stuff. And she's like, "I don't know. You just seem a little distant, blah, blah, blah." And nothing was really going on or anything, but it just took me by surprise that she would notice something like that. And it
yeah.
was more so she was concerned
She was care.
from it.
She cared about you. She
Right.
could see a difference in who you were and who you've become in this small amount of time. Like my wife tells me all the time, like all these kids staring at you all the time, and I don't think about it. I'm just up there, my thing, and this like, oh my gosh, this person actually noticed my change in demeanor.
Yeah, because she noticed. I think we had a practice AP exam that we took, and I got like a 3 on it. And
Oh,
she was like, yeah, she was like, "That's not, you know, reflective of your capabilities and stuff."
that's
And
not the Eric I know.
right, right. And I remember she literally even called my mom to see
Whoa.
if everything was okay. Just not in a bad way
No,
or
no,
anything,
but
just
just
out of
caring.
genuine
Yeah,
right.
we're just back to
So
caring. That's it. Yeah.
so then that in that moment, I really realized, I was like, wow, not only does she care about me as a person, but also, my education and everything like that.
And I think that's what a lot of people tend to overlook with teachers. And I'm not going to say every teacher's that way, but most of them are. People don't become teachers to be millionaires. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. And people who usually become teachers, they want to help, they want to care. It's just is the person receptive to that help and that care at that time? Are they willing to accept that, okay, you made a mistake, but this teacher's trying to help you overcome and be better than that, and not like, why are they on my case and blah, blah, blah. But again, it goes back to you and your maturity and how you were and the person that you were. And you were open enough to see that this person cared enough to say, man, what are you doing? Like, this isn't the Eric that I've known for the last 3 marking periods. You're like throwing it all away and not giving a crap here right at the end. Like, what are you doing? That's really interesting. So I asked my students who have listened to the podcast to give me questions every once in a while. Like, is there something that you want to ask? And I usually ask something about the transition from middle school to high school. And basically, what they wanted to know was, from your opinion, if you can remember, what was the biggest difference between middle school educationally and high school educationally?
Let's see. I'll say it's a little bit of a culture shock. It definitely is at first. You're used to most of the time, I guess in my experience, I should say rather. There's just a lot more people to begin with. I don't remember the student population of Don Estridge,
About 12,
but
15.
just yeah, but okay, so let's say 12, about 1,000 kids. When West Boca, there was, I think it was about 2,500.
Yeah. So it's
So
like, yeah, a lot, almost double. Right.
right, on a daily basis, not only you're seeing more people, you're interacting with more people. I had a lot more friends, like a bunch of kids that I used to play basketball with, knew from the neighborhood and stuff like that, who I had never gone to school with before, just because I always went to school in East Boca as opposed to West Boca. And now I'm going to school with them, so there's no one behind you as much to force you to do things. That you get to high school and it's all on you. It's up to you whether you want to go to class. You can skip if you want. It's up to you to do your homework and everything like that. There's no, usually your parents kind of take a step back at that point as well, just because you are developing into a young adult.
Yeah,
And
the reins, as we would say, are loosened, and it's more like, okay, here's the wheel. Don't crash the car. Good luck.
Right. Right. I mean, quite literally too. You start driving then, and
Exactly.
that's where the temptation lies. You have your own car. You drove to school. All right, my parents think I'm at school. Let me just skip for the day or something like that. So it's really, everything becomes more independent, I think, is the best way to put that.
That is a really good way to put it. So, if you could turn back time and tell 8th grade Eric some piece of advice of any kind to maybe help the future be a little bit more smooth without having to wreck the space-time continuum, as Doc Brown said in Back to the Future, what would you tell young Eric that might be able to help him have a smoother ride going forward?
To invest in Bitcoin.
And in,
Um,
in 8th grade, it'd be like, "Bit what? Isn't that only like
oh
25,
man,
0.25 cents?"
I think about that every now and then. There's a website that I think tells you, if you invested, let's say, a Starbucks cup of coffee worth in Bitcoins, let's say $5 back in, I guess, let's say for topic of this conversation, 2010,
Right.
what it would be worth
Worth.
now. And it's
Right.
just insane.
Astronomical. Right.
Right.
So, what was the most challenging educational experience, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I would probably say my initial transition into pharmacy school. UF definitely challenged me, taking, especially the last few classes, taking biochem and this and that. But it's just totally different when you start a graduate program. I'm actually in two right now. I'm in pharmacy school, and I'm also getting my MBA
Wow.
right now, and just seeing the difference, even on that level, the educational difference, the rigor and stuff like that. That I think that was the biggest culture shock. And also, I mean, UF was 4 hours away from home. If I wanted a home cooked meal, my mom would come up for the weekend, or I could go home, no problem. Now I'm in Memphis, and it's not just home isn't just a 4 hour drive away.
Right.
I can't call mom, hey, I'm coming home this weekend, or just pop up if I wanted to. So I think that made everything a little harder, but really just the rigor of the coursework. I'm started off taking classes that, I had already taken, even biochem and stuff like that, but it's just so much more in depth.
Yes.
You're thinking like, wow, I know this, like I should be okay, but it's like taking a whole new class. But just I just dug down deeper, spent longer nights in the library. That was a transition I had to make. I wasn't always a library kid. Even though I said it earlier, I used to go pick up books from the library and stuff. But as far as studying,
Yeah, that's
never,
totally different. It's
yeah,
totally different.
I
Reading and
never would,
studying.
yeah, I never would go to the library and just sit down and study. But that was something I had no choice to do once I started pharmacy school. I had to be at least start studying earlier. There's no room for procrastinating. I had to force myself to be in the library, even on it could be a random Tuesday. I don't even have an exam coming up for a week and a half, but I'm in the library because I need to study. I think that was one of the biggest adjustments I had to make.
I was very similar in that respect. I had to go to the library to study. I need the quiet. I need just nothing around me but nothing. I can't focus when there's a lot of noise. I just wind up reading the same thing over and over and over again. But I've known that ever since I was a little kid. Whereas for you, it was a transition because now, once you're in these higher level classes of these graduate programs, like you said, the perfect word, the rigor. It's just become more challenging, more difficult, more is expected of you. And you had to change your overall educational dynamic. I mean, let's face it, you're not a dummy. You weren't taking, basket weaving 101 and you weren't doing things like that. You were taking very difficult and challenging classes from the jump. And now you had to almost, I don't want to say reinvent yourself, but you had to redo your study techniques and habits of things that you did. So you're constantly being a chameleon and changing yourself to better or the situation that you're in. That's a really good point.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. Just as you said, I think you mentioned earlier how you used to have a photographic memory. I think I did too, and that's kind of what helped me get through middle school, some parts of high school. It just things came more easy and more natural. But then I remember also sitting, it was like my first, let's say, month of class, and I see all these kids with iPads. Everyone has an iPad. And I'm just like, why does everyone have an iPad? It's foreign to me. I was just used to either reading, like, just having the PowerPoint open on my computer and just reading it.
Right.
Maybe I'll write some notes, but I wasn't really a note guy. And then just one of my friends told me about it, and he showed me there's an app called Notability. I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows about that out there, but I love Notability now.
Yeah. It's a great
Literally,
app. Been using it for years. Yeah.
yep, import all my PowerPoints in there,
Yep.
any worksheet, anything, organize them by class, by subject, and just take all my notes in there. And it's going to make things easier for me in the future because once I start rotations and stuff like that, I can literally just, let's say I
Pop
want
it
to,
up.
yeah, search cardiology guidelines or, AFib or something like that. I can literally just put it in the search bar and there go all my notes,
Pops
right there
right up.
centralized for me. So,
That's always been a point that most of the interviewees have said that the organization is key, and you found it digitally, but you found it, and that's the key to success is being organized. But it's organized for what works for you, and that's what I think a lot of young kids fail to understand. They're taught how to be organized, but it doesn't work for them. Well, then you have to go out and find a process that works for you. And you found Notability and the iPad, and you're like, wow, this is heaven for me. Everything all in one place, one stop shopping. And it's just getting organized. It's kind of like when I started first using Google Classroom and Google Drive. I was all over the place and I was the most disorganized person in the world. And the first time I used it, I was like, where is anything? And somebody was like, you have to make folders and you have to organize it or else it's going to be all over the place. And then my second year, I was like, okay, here's chapter one. This is everything I did in section one in this folder, in this folder, in this folder. Now I have more stuff than I could ever use because of being organized. So it's like you have to train yourself, or in your case, retrain yourself to do something that will help you move forward. That's amazing. So, with all of this rigor that you are constantly talking about, when is there downtime for Eric? What do you do in order to just relax and have a little bit of me time? What are you doing? What what is the thing? Like, are you still into basketball, playing, watching? Like, what do you do?
It's kind of funny that you mentioned basketball. We're sitting here talking. I literally have the Heat game up
Of course you
right
do.
now.
I know. I remember what a huge Heat fan you were. That was like your most favorite thing to talk about in class. Like,
No, most definitely. So I think it's just important every day to take some time to yourself. Whether some people, meditate in the mornings, or
yeah,
a typical day for me, I have class, I might go to work, but usually before I go to the library or something at night, I'll take an hour or two. I'll take Mamba to the dog park or just on a long walk outside. Might just sit and stare at the ceiling, or I might go to the gym. And I still definitely, with COVID, made it hard with the gym and playing,
yeah,
finding places to play basketball, but things are starting to open up again now, which is nice. But I just always like to take an hour or two just to do something for me, just to decompress, to kind of separate from all that, because I think if you don't, you'll just, whether you'll be stressed out, exhausted. I think it's just important to take that time for yourself every day.
for sure. Or just burn out entirely and not be able to finish because you're just overwhelming yourself. So
Right.
now that we're more into basketball and you keep saying your dog's name, I have to ask, this is the homage to Kobe, correct?
So the full story, I mean, yes, the answer to that is yes.
The short answer is yes.
I wasn't a huge Kobe fan, but always loved Kobe. That's those one of the main guys,
Oh
especially
yeah.
when I was growing up. Rest in
Yeah, he
peace.
was it. He was LeBron before LeBron. He was it. He was the man. Right out of high
Yeah,
school, like it doesn't get better than that.
yep, just a prodigy. So the story with Mamba is one of my friends actually found him on Craigslist, convinced me to get him, and it
Oh,
was one of
what a
those.
great friend.
It was
Here's a
one of
dog that you
those.
should get.
Yeah, that she would not let me pass him up, and it was one of those meant to be stories. We actually have the same birthday, so I guess
What?
he's a triplet, I guess, if you want to say, with me
Right.
and my sister as well.
There you go.
He's mostly black. He has some white spots on him, but just, and I was 24 when I got him. He obviously wanted Kobe's number, so
Yeah, that's right.
it was perfect.
Yeah,
Mamba.
that is awesome. I love that story. Thank you for sharing. That's so cool. It took me a second. I was like, wait a minute, that's Kobe's nickname. Oh, that's so funny. Um, so going back to education, what would you say your most challenging experience was, and how did you overcome it?
I would say, let's go pre-pharmacy school, biochem at UF. Man,
That just sounds hard.
one of probably the hardest class to this date, just about, that I've taken. Just, it was taught by, it wasn't even like it was a bad professor or anything like that. It was just one of those difficult courses, learning, things on such a mechanical level.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you bring it down a little bit so my listeners can kind of understand? They may have heard of the class, but they're not quite totally understanding what it entails. Like, what were you studying? What was the crux of the class itself?
Yeah, so biochem stands for biochemistry, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically chemistry and biology mixed together. So you're learning about various biological processes. Let's say, the Krebs cycle, for example. You're learning about those biological processes, but on a deeper level, which is like the cellular and the molecular level. So you're just learning, um, all of the, this cell does this, and this is the pathway and the mechanism for it, and this is what it ends up doing in the body. So it's kind of combining everything together in relation to biology and chemistry, and
That's
it's
why
just,
I wanted you to explain it, because I know how hard it is, because I was the worst biology student in the world. And thank God my major, I didn't have to take chemistry. But putting the two of those together, I would just be like, I got to change my major. I just can't do this. Like, that just sounds impossible to me.
yeah, it's like, I think that's definitely, it's one of the most, anything chemistry related is really where things get intricate and stuff like that. But when you add biology to it, and those, vital human processes, which are already complex and difficult in themselves, it definitely becomes a lot. So taking that course, I just had to buckle down. Thankfully, I think the biggest adjustment I had to make then was seeking help. I was always a lone wolf type
Yeah.
of guy. I still am for the most part, but I had to learn that I don't know everything, and I had to be comfortable with seeking help. So that was the first time in my life I actually sought out to be tutored. I had a tutor for biochem, which helped greatly. Sought
Now,
outside
I
resources such as reviews and stuff like that.
I just want to ask you one question. I just have to jump in here. How did that make you feel? Since you're such a smart guy, how did that make you feel to have to ask for help when school for you was pretty much like, all right, I need to go to the library now because I got to study, and now you're like, I don't understand what's going on here. Like, how did you feel at that moment when you finally made the mature decision to go, I need a tutor?
It was tough, definitely tough at first, because usually when anytime I needed help, my first go-to, my sister,
Yeah,
without a doubt. But being that she wasn't taking
that class.
biochem, so I was kinda stuck. It was different because obviously it's not something that I've really had to do before. Not that I thought that it was beneath me or anything like that, because I don't think anyone should ever think that. But it's just tough. I think in any instance to ask for help.
Yeah,
Um,
I told you in the pre-interview that's one of my hardest things to do is to ask for help. I will just sit there and struggle forever, and I don't want to ask people for help. And then, of course, after you finally do it and you're like, "Woohoo, I accomplished this," then all of a sudden 10 people pop out of the woodwork like, "Hey, dude, why didn't you ask me for help? I know exactly what to do." And it's like, "Oh man," and you have all these
exactly.
people in your life who can, but we're I don't know, maybe it's just a headstrong male thing. I don't know. It's all that testosterone or whatever. But I was the same way. It's like I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna do it. It doesn't matter what it is. Like I just help. No, I can do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, as satisfying as the feeling is just to figure out things on your own, it's just one of those things when it comes to education and school, especially as you advance, there are people around you who know more than you do. That's always going to be the case. I mean, hopefully, eventually, you get to the point where you're the expert in your field, but even then, you're not going to know everything. There's going to be people who might know one aspect of something better than you do, and that's just life. So
Right.
that being said, I think it's definitely something to do that's better to do early as opposed to late. Time is never on your side in that aspect. So the earlier you ask for help, the more benefit you get out of it. Definitely.
Now, you just said something that sparked another question for me. How would you have dealt with this back in high school? Because you said this was college that you needed a tutor.
Yes.
How would Eric have dealt with that if you were taking a class similarly in high school? Would you have been able to ask for help, or you would have just gone the old, "Hey sis, how do you do this?" Because she basically was taking the same stuff you did. So, how would high school Eric have dealt with that particular situation?
Definitely would have went to Dominique first, but let's say for hypotheticals that she didn't know or
Right, right.
something like
Yeah,
that.
let's just say that. We know that's not
Right,
true, but let's
we
just say
definitely know that's not the case, but let's just say for purposes of this conversation, I know I definitely would sit and wallow and kind of be stubborn because I can definitely be stubborn at times. I'm not going to
I hear you.
say that I wouldn't have been able to, but it definitely would have taken a lot, especially at that age. I wasn't where I was, a few years later mentally
Or
to
maturity, the
right.
maturity level. Yeah, for sure.
Like it would have been nice. I mean, there's classes, let's say AP classes, or even regulars or honors classes, your physics or calc, geometry, even whatever it is that are difficult. They're not easy classes in high school and stuff like that. So I would just always say you have people around you that help,
Yeah,
that that that
you were
can help.
just lucky. You had a built-in twin who, I mean, the two of you are like the smartest brother and sister pair I think I've ever taught. Like, I mean, between the two of you, there's more brain power there than I don't know where. I mean, you guys were just so bright, and yeah, it must have been a wonderful thing to be able. I guess that's why you didn't have to ask for help. You had your sister, and you could ask her for anything because she's your twin sister. It's not like she's your older sister or younger sister. She's your twin, so you felt comfortable at that. Was kind of like you had a built-in tutor from day one. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely a luxury I know most people don't have. But just
For
like I
sure.
said, just don't be afraid to reach out to whether it's the faculty or just even your parents might know things like that. It's like, "Hey, mom, do you know this?" And if they don't, I'm sure they will do probably everything in their power to help you
to
find
help you.
someone that does and gets you those answers that you need or that help you need. Because at the end of the day, they're your support system and they just want to see you do well. So
Exactly. So that leads me to your quote. You had mentioned that your mom had a really good one that you've pondered upon over the years. And what was that? What was the quote that mom gave you that you're like, I'm going to keep this one?
yeah, so my mom always told me for as long as I can remember that tough times don't last. Tough people do. And what she always meant by that was not only are there, other people who have done and gone through exactly what you're going through and triumphed, so that means you can do it too. If they did, you can. But also just kind of to focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, let's say. Like it even though things might suck now, even though this class might be kicking your butt or just it's difficult, you hate it, some class you will take a class as a student that might make you want to reevaluate learning as a whole.
For
It's
sure.
just, if you just dig deeper, grind, and just push through it, it always gets better at the end.
I love what you said about that people have gone through this before. And that was the same thing that my mother told me. And we're obviously generationally apart, but I heard the same thing when I was in college. And my mom is like, how many hundreds of people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people have gone through the exact same thing? They can't fail everyone. It's going to make them look bad. You just have to figure out the system and make it work for you and do the best you can and keep going. And that's it. You can't just give up because the professor doesn't understand you. They're not trying to help you. It's very difficult. You have to get through it. And there's how many people before you and how many people after you that are going to do it. So that is definitely a great piece of advice for sure, without a doubt. So, is there anything that you learned about Don Estridge as a school after you left? Like you left and you were like, oh my God, I never noticed that or realized that until you went to high school or maybe even college. And you just went, wow, that was interesting. Positive, negative.
I would say definitely on a positive note, just the level of the education we received as a whole, whether whether you were taking, whether you're gifted or not, just as a whole, top to bottom. I remember when I started at West Boca, being in classes with kids I had known, like I said, whether it was from the neighborhood or just playing basketball, whatever it was, um, and what they most of them went to other schools, didn't go to Don Estridge, and just seeing where they were academically, like so you start talking about, let's say, a homework assignment or something like that, something you might think is really simple that you learned, let's say some history topic I learned about in your class, and they have never heard of it, and it's
Wow.
just like, wow, like how do you not know this? It's so surprising to me that you wouldn't know this, and it's
Right. I
just
was taught
the
this in middle
quality of
school.
education was just so different.
Wow, that's a really nice compliment. Thank you so much. We always basically say Don Estridge is a private school with public school prices. We're giving you a private school education, but it's for free, and that's why so many people want to go there. And again, maturity, age, you don't quite understand that until you leave. Don't get me wrong; there are always some that get it, but most don't. And then they go to high school, and I say it all the time. Like I'll never forget the kids came back one year and they were like, "Oh my God." The teacher said, how many of you went to Don Estridge? And 3 or 4 of us raised their hand. And the teacher goes, you all learned this last year. So I know you know this because I know your teacher. So you have the next 2 weeks off. And everybody else who was from Omni and Carver and all these other schools, they were like, hey, that's not fair. How come they don't have to do the work? And the teacher was like, because they already know it. And that was when I realized exactly what you just said, that we really go up and beyond to teach you things to make sure that you're prepared and you know what's coming next. And that's what we strive to do. We want to make sure that you guys are going to high school almost over prepared.
Yeah, and you guys definitely succeeded in that, top to bottom. So kudos to you and all my professors and
Thank
just
you.
the school as a whole.
Appreciate that. So, is there anything that high school then showed you that Don Estridge taught you? Was there something that you were in high school? I guess, like you said, it was the knowledge of things that we taught you, like something in history, like some treaty or something that they didn't teach in another school, and you were already ahead. So I guess it was that pretty much answers that question, unless there was something else you remember.
No, just basically for the most part what I just mentioned.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So when you look back at your time in education, do you feel that there were times when Eric's big brain, as I always say these years, I'm like, big brain. I always say that when somebody gets a right answer. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I say it, but I just say it and the kids love it. Um, was there a time when you would just like sit back on your intelligence and just not have to really put forth the effort, and then all of a sudden you were like, whoa, I long for those days again where I'm not having to put so much effort in?
Oh, me and my classmates now, we talk about this all the time. Definitely back to the middle school days and even most of high school. It wasn't really until I started, the deeper science classes at UF where I realized, I can't just skate through this anymore.
Yeah.
Um, Things started to catch up to you just because, as I mentioned, you're not going to know everything as much as you want to, as smart as you think you are. You're never going to know everything. So it's just being able to recognize that and making that adjustment. But that was something that really started for me at UF.
So that humbling experience of I don't know all that I think I do, and oops, I gotta go study. Yeah.
Yep, it's a wake up call because you go from, if I know if I look at this material for 2 hours or just read through the PowerPoints or just read through the notes, whatever it is, I'll be okay. But then that 2 hours turns into three turns into six turns into 12, and you're just like it's not the same. But you have to
Right.
be able to recognize that. So
It was interesting because for me, I always felt like I studied more every level that I went up. And then when I finally reached graduate school and I was going for education, and they taught us the different learning styles, and I finally figured out what kind of learning style I was. I actually studied smarter instead of harder. I spent less time studying the material just the correct way. And once I figured that out, I was getting basically straight A's. And I was like, why am I working the least amount of any level? I'm in graduate school and it seems to be the easiest. And I finally figured out because I was studying wrong. And now I try to convey that to the kids in middle school. And I'm like, look, you need to take a learning styles test. You need to figure out what kind of learning style you are. And then you need to go make sure that you're studying for that learning style. Because if not, you're studying wrong. And that's why you're not doing as well as you would like, because you're wasting your time. It's not sticking in your brain. It's like if I only use masking tape to hold something up, but I really need Gorilla Glue, it's not going to work. It's going to hold it for a minute and then it's going to break. And trying to get these middle schoolers to understand that, they're like, oh, but I've been doing this the way I've always been doing this. And what is that old adage? If you do what you always did, you get what you always got. And
yep,
it's not going to change. You have to, you
definitely.
are the instrument of change, but most people don't want to do that. That's, yeah. Well, that was interesting
I
for
mean,
sure.
just like Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah, it's just being able to recognize that. Thankfully, when I got to, just like you said, even though I'm in graduate school now, same thing here. I'm definitely working smarter as opposed to harder. I was fortunate enough to come across faculty and we have different services and stuff, and they kind of made us look into those different learning styles and this and that. Like I have classmates who are more like me. I just basically sit and read through stuff, but then you have people who need to make study guides and flashcards and
Hmm.
this, that, and the other thing. So it's just
Yep.
like you said, knowing what works best for you, and that'll definitely translate not only into you performing better in the classroom, but it'll definitely take up less time as well.
And that's what it's all about, time management. Because once you start to get to graduate school, like I believe you mentioned briefly, you have a job and you have a dual major in graduate school. Granted, graduate school still full time 9 credits? Is that the same today?
So now it's a lot more pharmacy for me. I think this semester I'm taking 20 or 21 credits.
No, no, no. I meant like to be considered a full-time graduate student, is the minimum amount of credits you need to take 9, or maybe you don't know because you're not doing that.
I I guess maybe I'm not sure because the way our curriculum is set up. I know for my MBA class, I mean program, I think it's at least 6
Oh, okay.
to be for that. So I guess probably 6, maybe 9, but
Because that's what it was when I was in graduate school, but that was like a gazillion years ago. So who knows how things change. So I always end these podcasts in the same exact way. I ask the same exact question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway. My last question is, do you remember who Don Estridge was?
I do. That one I learned. I remember I had a cousin who was always into computers, and when I guess when my sister and I got accepted into Don Estridge, which is also a funny story because we almost didn't go there.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell that story after this, but I remember telling him we were going to Don Estridge, and then he was a big he's a year older than me, big computer guy. He was like, "Oh, like, do you know who that is?" And I, didn't know, didn't care. And I
Right.
mean, I know a lot of students probably know IBM is right up the street, but basically he was one of the most instrumental guys in developing the personal computer with IBM back in the day. So
And actually, our school was the IBM building. It was a facility that was covered by trees. There were native Boca Ratons or whatever they're called. I don't even know. And they were like, "Where did this school come from? When did they build it?" I'm like, "This school has been here for like 20 years." They're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "This was a secret IBM facility where the personal computer was made by Don Estridge. That's why the building is called Don Estridge." And people who've lived in Boca for 40 years were like, "That
I had
building
no
wasn't
idea.
there." And they were clueless. They had no idea. And I said, "Yeah, it was covered with all kinds of foliage and nobody had any idea." And they're like, "Wow." Because they couldn't believe how quickly the building, quote unquote, went from nothing to a school,
Right.
And I was like, it was always a building. They just repurposed it. But yeah, no, that's awesome that you knew who that was. So what was this story about you getting into Don Estridge and not wanting to go?
So it wasn't that we didn't want to go. It was, I remember, obviously you applied to get into Don Estridge. So my sister and I applied, and I guess, just didn't get in initially. And it was literally, like I mentioned, we lived in West Boca at the time, so we were gonna go to Loggers Run. That was our home school. And I remember we literally were on the way home from Loggers Run. Had just went and picked up our schedule. This is 3, 4 days before school is about to start. Literally, we're on our way home, and my mom gets a phone call saying, I guess the spots opened up on the waiting list and that we were accepted into Don Estridge.
Nice. Yeah, that must have been an awesome feeling because I remember I've heard that story from a bunch of kids over the years where they were like, "I never got in," and then right before I got the phone call. I remember one kid who told me they got the phone call like the morning of. Like they were all ready to go to Omni or whatnot, and then they got the call and they were like, "What do we do? Do
Yeah,
we
that's crazy. That's cutting it close.
Yeah. Do we go to Omni or do we go to Don Estridge? We've already gone to schedule pickup and we went and looked at the whole school and they're like, we wanted to go to Don Estridge the whole time. But yeah, it's not uncommon that people who got in, they moved or decided not to go or whatever the case may be. That's awesome. I didn't know that story. I'm so glad that you did because otherwise I never would have known who you and your sister were. That's
Right.
incredible.
We wouldn't be having this conversation now. So it's just
Not at all.
I'm a proponent of everything happens for a reason. So it was just something that was meant to be, and here we are.
Agreed 100%. I've always lived my life. My grandfather used to say that. My mom tells me that all the time. Your grandfather always says everything happens for a reason. And as I've gotten older, I'm in agreement. I totally do. There's a reason for all of these things. There's a reason for something being put in your path. And hopefully it's a good reason. And it definitely helps you out. So on that note, Eric, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for telling us about yourself and your journey and from my class to today. There was one thing that I know all of my boys students are going to want to know. You have mentioned basketball theme throughout the whole thing. Since I haven't seen you in quite a few years, what did you top out as height wise? How tall are you now?
I'm 6'2", so
Okay.
I
I know
wish
the boys are going to ask me all the time. You talked about basketball, but you never asked him how tall he was.
I wish I was supposed to be 6'6". The doctor lied to me. I don't
Whoa.
know what happened there.
Whoa.
According to growth chart and this, percentile, and you hear that growing up.
Yeah.
But I ended up at 6'2". I'm happy
Nice.
where I'm at.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.